Well, grace and peace, beloved, from Jesus, the resurrection and the life. Amen. Well, that memorable passage is recognizable by many, and those words are often heard at funerals, and they're offered to offer comfort to the grieving. Well, the words can bring hope that even though we grieve now through Jesus, there is hope in the now and the future. Well, this story that we heard today, like any good narrative, is an emotional drama with a surprise ending. The story of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha moves from heartache to miracle to invitation. Well, in the Gospel of John, this is the sixth of seven miraculous signs, and the magnitude of the miracles grows throughout the Gospel. We began with Jesus changing the water into wine. He cures an officer's son. He heals a handicapped man. He feeds 5,000. He gives sight to a blind man, and now today, he raises a dead man to life. Well, the final and seventh sign will be Jesus' own resurrection. Well, we begin the Gospel of John at a wedding celebration, celebrating love. And now, as we near the end of the Gospel, we're at a funeral, grieving the loss of a loved one. Well, there's plenty of heartache to go around. Sisters Mary and Martha love their brother Lazarus, and they also love Jesus. They want Jesus there while their brother is dying. They want him to be the comforting friend for them and the healer for their brother. They knew Lazarus was seriously ill, and his only chance of healing was by Jesus. Well, they sent for help from Jesus, and Jesus didn't come. He purposely delayed his travel, but how that must have broken the hearts of Mary and Martha. Is it any wonder that they confront Jesus with, "Lord, if you had been here"? Well, how many times have we asked that question? "Lord, if you'd only understood my need. Lord, if you'd only listened to my concern. Lord, if you only acted then." If you were really with us, then our brother, our mother, our child, the school children, or friend would not have died. Those prayers honestly express the deep concerns and the breaking hearts, the same emotions Mary and Martha expressed to Jesus. There's pain, there's disappointment, there's hurt. Well, Jesus had a relationship with this family. He too was hurting. He held it all together until he saw the sisters and the mourners wailing and weeping. He too was deeply disturbed and moved. Jesus wept, just as he wept with the children and parents in Florida. This story shows Jesus' humanity. Even though he knew he was about to restore Lazarus' life, Jesus wept. And he had compassion on Mary and Martha and all those that mourn. As Martin Copenhaver writes, "Grief is baptized with tears, even as it enters into the promise of new life." Well, Jesus, in his interaction with first Martha and then Mary, gives us an example of how to relate to those that are grieving. Jesus knew them individually and met each one where they were. Martha, the more practical one, meets Jesus on the way and gives him a piece of her mind. They talk and discuss theological claims on the resurrection. Jesus assures her that her brother will rise again. Mary, on the other hand, is the more emotional one. When Jesus meets her, there's no talking about resurrection. He meets her emotion with silence and emotion. Jesus weeps with her. In both circumstances, Jesus opens himself to their feelings in the places where they are at. And he also doesn't defend himself against their accusations. He responds by not responding. He holds them in their grief and says nothing. Jesus realizes it is their grief talking. He ignores their hurtful words and loves them in their grief. He knows that we lash out at those we love most because we feel safe with them. Yet Jesus doesn't retreat from them, but he remains present with them. He stays with them as the pain of grief is real. And grief, the pain, always is. Jesus honors them by remaining with them even though he knows it will get better and soon. But still, he is there. Well, the miracle of this story starts as a promise. Your brother will rise again. Martha assumes it's in some future promise, some far-off time. But Jesus means something immediate. It's not just an end times promise, but something that makes an impact and difference right now, right here. It's when we are in this place of grief and pain that we need to read to the end of the story. The end of the story is not the end of Lazarus, but a new beginning. The same God that calls Lazarus out of the tomb is the same one who will raise Jesus from the tomb. It's the same God that will redeem creation and raise all of us to new life. Well, when Jesus commands the stone to be removed and the impediment is cleared away, Jesus surprised all those that are gathered there with the shout of Lazarus, come out. And he did. There was nothing that Lazarus could do for himself. All that he could do was receive what Jesus could give him, a new life. This sign by Jesus, like many of the other signs, created a mixed bag of reactions. Some believed, and some plotted against Jesus. Some were comforted and spurred on in their faith, and others were threatened and hardened their opposition. So it is with God's activity in the world. It will change us. It will comfort some and threaten others. With the promise of new life, it's good news to those that recognize that the old life is not enough. It threatens and upsets those who don't want to change. Well, in the midst of this miracle, you too are asked to participate. Jesus invites the community to unbind Lazarus and let him go. Jesus didn't have to ask anyone for help. Jesus could have unbound Lazarus, smacked a congratulatory slap on his back, and welcomed him back from the dead. Well, Jesus didn't glow in the limelight of this miracle. He invites those around him to get involved, to play a part in moving this miracle forward. You, too, are invited to unbind others from their grave cloths. Well, through the Gospel of John, we have heard the phrase, come and see. Jesus begins the invitation to come and see where he is staying so the disciples can learn and listen to his teaching. Nathanael is invited by Philip to come and see this Jesus. The Samaritan woman invites the community to come and see Jesus the Messiah. Jesus asks where Lazarus has been laid in his tomb, and Jesus is invited to come and see by the mourners. And now you are invited to tell others, to be witnesses to God's action in your life, to invite others to come and see, to participate in God's mission as God's action in your life unfolds over your lifetime. You are invited to move from standing around and watching to being at the center of what God is doing. Well, just as the sheep followed Jesus' voice, the disciples followed Jesus, that even the dead follow Jesus' command. So you too are invited to follow Jesus. During this Lenten journey, we're invited to ponder how we follow Jesus in our lives. How do we as individuals and as a community of faith work together to follow and to know Jesus and to share this with others who need a word of hope? Well, the story of Lazarus' resurrection continues the ever-expanding revelation of who Jesus is. Jesus, both human and divine. Jesus, the abundance of God's grace upon grace. Jesus, the fullness of life. Jesus, the light of the world. Jesus, the resurrection and the life. Well, the joyous occasion of Lazarus' chance for new life, of being born again, was the very sign, the very pivotal moment for Jesus. It was this event that caused the religious leaders to begin contemplating killing Jesus. Jesus, who released Lazarus, will be physically bound at his arrest. Jesus, the man who gave life, will soon have his own taken away. From now on, Jesus will spend his time outmaneuvering the religious leaders as he prepares his disciples to continue his work without him there physically present. But the story does not end here. There is one surprising event that will surpass even Lazarus' resurrection. And for that chapter in the story, we wait. Amen.